Hello, this is Emad Mirabi. This is a sample of my online teaching lessons. Let's start. There are three main methods by which heat or thermal energy is transferred: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction or heat transfer in solids. Heat travels through a solid without movement of the material itself. So in conduction, only particles vibrate and no material moves itself. So heat travels through a solid without movement of the material itself by passing energy from one molecule to the next, or from one particle to the next, because not all materials are molecular. For example, in solids, in metals, we have atoms and free electrons. There are no molecules there. Okay, fast molecules bump into slower ones, or fast particles bump into slower ones. It is best in metals, or good conductors. So conduction happens the best in metals. Poor conductors are wood, plastic, air. They are called insulators. Examples of conduction is when a spoon is getting hot in the tea, or iron rod heated at one end, so heat propagates quickly to the other end. Okay. Contribution of free electrons in the conduction. In a metal, atoms are arranged in a regular lattice. Some electrons are not tightly bounded to atoms. They become free electrons. In fact, we have a lot of free electrons. The free electrons drawn here are less than expected. So let me draw some more. So here, because for every atom there are several free electrons, so we have a sea of electrons. So we'll have a sea of electrons. Now, if one side of this metal is heated, when one part of the metal is heated, the free electrons gain energy and move faster. As they move, they collide with atoms and other electrons. So you see that the free electrons move, and sometimes they collide with other atoms and sometimes with other electrons, transferring energy quickly throughout the material. This makes heat conduction in metals much faster than in non-metals, because in non-metals you will have no free electrons. These free electrons also contribute in greater electricity conduction. Okay. Now we want to talk about convection. Heat transfer in liquids and gases. Heat moves through fluids by the movement of particles themselves. Okay. An example of convection is sea breeze or land breeze, or when you have a pot of water, you put it on heat and the water boils. Hot fluid rises, cold fluid sinks, forming a convection current. Occurs in air, water, oil, or fluids generally. In gases and liquids, it can happen. Examples are boiling water, sea breeze and land breeze, hot air balloon rising. Let me explain more about boiling water. So assume that we have a pot here. This pot has a thickness, and then we apply heat here. For example, this is a candle or something, whatever, it's fire. And you have this pot is filled with a liquid, let's call it water. So first, when the heat will transfer from fire to the pot by both convection and radiation. Both methods apply here. So, because the temperature of fire is around 300 degrees Celsius, the radiation is considerably large. When the temperature is rising, for example, when you have a high temperature, radiation contribution will be greater. Okay, so we'll have both radiation and convection here. So the metal here feels the heat. From one side of the metal to the other side of the metal, the heat propagates by conduction, of course. So the heat will, the atoms or free electrons of the metal feel the heat and propagates through the pot. And then the other side of the pot, which is in contact with the water, feels the heat, so the particles here will feel the heat, so they expand. The molecules of water here, those which are in contact with the metal, will feel the heat, so they expand. When the water expands, density decreases. So it starts to rise in the pot. So the surrounding water replaces, because it forms a relative vacuum here. So the surrounding water replaces, and then a convective current will be formed like this. So this acts like a stir and moves the water inside this pot. This is called convection currents. And of course, this is a natural convection inside this pot. You can put a stirrer like this and apply a stirring, and then it would be forced convection. So by applying a stirrer or moving the material, moving the fluid, we can increase the heat transfer rates considerably. Okay, let's talk about radiation. Heat transfer via electromagnetic waves. Heat travels in the form of infrared radiation. No particles needed. Radiation can happen in vacuum, as it is the case when Earth gets the heat from the sun. The radiation or electromagnetic waves travel through vacuum to reach the Earth. It doesn't need any contact. No contact is needed. Dark and dull surfaces absorb more, shiny surfaces reflect. So we have some details about radiation that we can say dull surfaces absorb more energy and shiny surfaces reflect energy. So if you want to have the greatest absorption, you need to have dark and dull surfaces in the radiation. Examples of radiation is sun warming your skin or sun warming the earth. Heat from a fire. Even if you don't, for example, if there is a stove, gas stove in your room, and there is fire burning inside it, even at a close distance or large distance from the fire, you will feel the heat, and that heat is due to radiation, not convection. Radiator in a room. Radiator in a room, both convection method and radiation method applies to heat the room, because the temperature of the radiator is not very much, so both contributions are also considerable. But in the case of, for example, a gas stove, the radiation contribution is greater. So comparison between heat transfer methods: conduction, convection, and radiation. Is medium required? In conduction, yes, medium is required. A solid is required to transfer the heat. In convection, we need a fluid for heat transfer. In radiation, no medium is required. Does any material move in this heat transfer methods? In conduction, no, only particles move. In convection, yes, because, for example, in the wind, in the wind or breeze at the sea or beach, yeah, the air itself moves, the material itself moves. And of course, in the radiation, no movement is needed. Only electromagnetic waves, which are no matter, they move and carry the energy. The speed of heat transfer is the greatest in radiation, and then in conduction, and then in convection. Convection has a lowest rate of heat transfer. That's why, of course, we're talking about natural convection, when no stir or fan is being used. That's why in many radiators a fan is being used, so we'll have a fan heater. So by applying a fan, we're moving the air so that the convection method is forced convection, so that we can increase the rate of heat transfer there. Okay. Examples of conduction is metal rod. Example of convection is boiling water or sea breeze or land breeze. Example of radiation is sunlight, fire. Okay. Which example? Quiz problem. Quiz number 1. Which method of heat transfer does not require medium? Of course, radiation does not need any medium.